Okay, hello. Welcome back to, I think this is the 7th installment of the book talk. Today I have with me Gracy. Hi, Grace.
Hi.
So, when I hanin Gracy kasomte, hanin adulawang ti kahlaw. She's just someone who I really admire as a person, her individuality, because heta program kanti hawin Chief Justice
Of India,
Chief Justice of India, local kanin muto. I really like the way that she was that modern bossy woman. Yeah. So, and I mean that in the best way. So to me and I always thought she would be such a good person for the show, and I'm so happy that she came here today. Ama Gracy hi Mizoram Judicial Service tuna Oma, and then Guwahati High Court Aizol Bench Joint Registrar Animeka. So I'm so glad she could be here today and share her books. So welcome, Grace.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And this is such a it's such a cute thing, and plus such a great initiative, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, Amelia, really well done on having this.
Thank you so much. First of all, question kazoto, the first question that I want to ask you is, when did you start reading?
Oh yeah, I've just always been quite a big reader. I think we started out quite young. I started out with Enid Blyton books, the Famous Five, all of that, and then you went on to Nancy Drew, and then Agatha Christie, and then eventually by I think Paul Riadvel Kantuanin started reading Sidney Sheldon. I don't know whether it was too appropriate or not at that time, but Sidney Sheldon, Daniel Steele, and all of that, and yeah, just generally just reading all the time. Yes, progressing from there. And Sweet Valley, I don't know kids these days if they're reading all of these things, but those were really the foundations of where I started reading, and started quite early.
Okay. I think everyone that I've talked to have they've all read Enid Blyton. Enid Blyton, part of my childhood, so I think that's a note for parents that you should start your kids young, have them read these good books. Enid Blyton I think it's still a good book for kids today.
Yeah, very much so. It has a lot of content, the experiences that children have, and I think if we go back to them, even now, we would discover a lot of things, right?
That we didn't realize back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And how has your reading changed? Are you in progress?
Yeah, definitely. It has changed. Sometimes I would go back, and sometimes I would go forward also. And I think hey, my interest with relationship and my interest with literature, has always been progressing, like you said. And cousin Pakatyanin, she suggested that I take it up as as a study, but then I couldn't actually I didn't want to confine myself to the rigors of academics, because I wanted to be in the sidelines, in the frills, and be able to comment, whenever I want. And
as a discipline,
as a discipline, and I'm because then I get very technical and I get hardcore, and I'll just get into it and lose the fun of it more. So I think dabbled into different styles of writing, and what is this particular way of writing, and my cousins have always been quite helpful in that respect. One of my cousins, she teaches English literature, and I always go to her, and she has the most, her name is Philia, by the way. So she has the most I just love her perspective, and she's a patyan ring top amhinita, and that doesn't mean she's she's succumbed herself to orthodoxy or anything like that, but the way she looks at books, it's very refreshing, and I really like that. And
okay. And my last question before we go into the books, how has reading helped you in your profession? How has reading, maybe for pleasure, specifically, how has that translated into your profession and helped you, or
very much
helped your mindset? Because you work in law, and that's just policy making.
So oh my God, reading, it's just, you're a reader as well, so right? So when you read a book, there is this particular methodology in feminism which they call world traveling.
Okay.
And my books have allowed me to travel. Even though I might not be able to physically go to places, my books have allowed me to travel to places, to other people's hearts, their minds, their understanding, their perspective. And so even if I am unable to experience them myself, at least I'm able to understand a little bit of what they go through, what the places are, all of that. So for that, it enriches me to game in help dance so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Game po ingi ka Harry Potter books. I never knew this. Mase tun naya ka realize to katelay hanin katsiar na sa to pa. It's like it's still one of my favorite. Hey, very close to my heart. Harry Potter. Sanin tungi duber mintihan. I always said Luna Lovegood.
Yeah.
And ngatingi le kadue mem le katya. Now I know like she has taught me so much about individuality and standing up for your character. Minlaw influence di ka, even I didn't realize it. Mase I think you have a lot of stories like that also.
Very much.
Oh, it has taught me this. It has taught me that. So maybe we can go on to your first book.
My first book. So my first book is this.
Okay.
So it's the 100 Years of Solitude by Gabrielle Garcia Marquez. So this is a very famous book. So I'm sure a lot of you have already read it or you've heard about it. Amelia has certainly read it. And so I chose this book because when Amelia spoke to me about doing the book talk, and I actually had to kind of rummage through my head, like thinking like, what are the 3 books that I want to talk about? And there are so many books that we've read in our lives that changed us, but for me, I chose this particularly because it changed my relationship with books, like the way I progressed. So, and this book is so rich. And I wish I could speak Spanish, and I was able to read it in Marquez's own tongue and know that the tone that he used and all of that. But unfortunately, I can't, so I have to read the translated version.
So it's still pretty awesome.
It's like this book is like jam packed with a lot of the things that is going on in the world today, and it was written in the 60s, I think. I'm not very sure now, but. Atil ken a message ken haute he tuna hian applicable ziate because it spoke of crimes against humanity, it spoke of genocide, it spoke of 3,000 people being like disappeared in a matter of one day, it spoke about colonialism, it spoke about it spoke about like not very comfortable things, but like incest and and human relationships basically. And why I said it changed my relationship with literature, this book particularly, is because it pushed the boundaries of my imagination like so much for me. This is what this book represents for me, because usually like when we started out like reading books like Sidney Sheldon, Tennessee, they're all really amazing writers, but this book, it blew my mind. Like it was pushing me to think about things that I was like, well, I don't really think,
I've never thought about that.
Yeah. So and also the style of writing, it's like magic realism, right? So Gabo's style of writing is that, and me being always, hey, lo katita kay manso, and my entire existence and my entire profession is on an inquiry of facts. Factual things akan en lauta kain concentrate tani mase hemi buka hansonin hey thil mak de like for example like Remadio's The Beauty ka amel chalu tu ka vana ha kalpo paise the amem chon they have like plagues that lasted for sleeping plagues that lasted for 10 years. Imagine if that happened now. So nya katya ang new ka azya ka kanril ruwa chuanin enge thil thei pon mi ani mi kan imagination can be stretched sakna sa chuwang chuan. That's why I really enjoyed this particular book, even though a lot of the things that happened within this was just like a scandalizing video lekta masya. I would encourage you, it's a bit dense, masya zia char turin ka encourage you. Any other thing you want to talk
Do you have any particular things like passages that you want to share?
Oh my gosh, so many, but then I want to No,
it's okay. No, it's okay. Inglo, do not pay attention, especially with, I think everyone knows what's happening in Afghanistan and everything like that. So things like this, it can make us see and wonder and help us understand what's really happening inside I mean outside of our world, because Mizoram content it's like a cocoon of like a really peaceful place without maybe hey disturbances at the border. Of course those things happen otherwise we live in such a peaceful state, so pon lam ate thil thing thei te khatyang te engkim hi kanin aware ve khiangai khatya. So I think this is one book that
so 100 Years of Solitude. I wish I could read it again, right now, and like kind of have gain new perspective on it. Maybe I will venture to that, towards that eventually, because I read this at quite a young age, to be really honest. I was still a teenager when I read this, and obviously I've grown from there, and I think my relationship with this book would change even more if I had read it now.
So what's the next book?
Okay, the next book. This is exciting. So there is this little book circle that this neighbor of mine, Mami, she had made, and it was actually her recommendation that we read this book. It's An Imaginary Life by David Malouf. So he's an Australian writer, and so this book basically it's a fiction, obviously, and it's about the poet Ovid. So he was like Ovid was one of the three poets of during the Roman Lars Walan and he was exiled. And then he eventually passed away. And there's a lot of controversy on whether Ovid was really exiled or not. And since he was kind of that person who had extravagant. They were exile hunlaya. Alekazia tam takte po kha ati chop ti po an argument in the literature world. So but obviously Malouf has written like a fiction of how Ovida exile nuwa khanin atunga thil thleng shang kha ma own fiction angina ronzia. So I really enjoyed it, and I want to thank Mami also for recommending this book. And so why I enjoyed this book particularly is because it re-established the relationship that Ovid had with the world, the earth. At the Roman Empire, one of the most advanced civilizations. He was a poet. He was he had everything like drinking good wine and having like good relationships with people, social life, and he was literally like exiled to the ends of the earth, where his life, he was stripped literally bare. Rediscovered. So for me, it speaks a lot about our relationship with the world, and that resonates with me so much because of climate change. Anita, our relationship with our world, like how we treat it, it has an impact. And the distances that we've created between ourselves and the world, ourselves and other living beings like animals, and the way that we treat them, all of these things, it may not necessarily be how Malouf imagined it to be understood, but this is how I perceive this particular book. So
that's the beauty of books.
Yeah, that's the beauty of books, actually. So this is. And I'm just going to read you like this particular line that I really like. Can I do that?
Yes.
So when Ovid was, Ovid was speaking about, it speaks on a first person narrative. So when I think of the tongue that has been taken away from me, so he was basically exile
okay.
Literally a relationship kamo nang mahi khoilai island amoni vada tok chise khatyang khani me chon mishing an lo omtanga chonin engma inin an nai nei lo an style of eating te engen ate chon awom na mun khai was apparently next to the, hold on, I wrote this down somewhere. I think it was like right on the peripheries of the Black Sea or the Caspian Sea. I can't recall. One of that. Anita chanin enge vegetation po omlong shem chanin, and So he says like, when I think of the tongue that has been taken away from me, it is some earlier and more universal language than our Latin, subtle as it undoubtedly is. It's so beautiful. Latin is a language for distinctions. Every ending defines and divides. The language I am speaking of now, that I am almost speaking, is a language whose every syllable is a gesture of reconciliation. We know that language once, I spoke it in my childhood, we must discover it again. Atitani hemi na asoy tumberak kasyata timen kay maaaron to dana. Tuanin kantil ti na po inte kan law sata kan comfort turin ACT kan daa tuanin hey deep television, air purifier, all of these things to make ourselves more comfortable, to adapt ourselves to our changing world, which obviously is brought on by us, right? So kan language of speaking, kan style of living, it alienate na sa atitani. We're building boundaries around ourselves and keeping each other out. And so his message is about reconciliation. We need to go back to our roots, Adita. And the way that he described, eventually I think that's what Malouf was trying to describe, was how Ovid passed away. It was more like him becoming one with nature. Like nature subsumed top ang kana ziak tayo. It's so beautiful. Hey, for me it katantuanin nge kamitwit la katsiarin ni siya thamen karilruwa min effect na sa top ta kan climate change kan nga ito atsuanin. It is because of us. It's our earth and second option om tolo second planet om tolo ta plan B po om tolo hey kan nei suna niya kan relationship hi kan teacher nga. A lot of people will just be like, I'm sure Amelia have experienced it, they'll be like well, I don't want to know so much because if I know so much, then I have to change my lifestyle, and I don't want to be too restricted. And well, I understand where that's coming from, but the thing is that while you're doing that, like other people are literally dying. Like there are countries who are on the verges of existential threat, and people like UN General Assembly attend, they're crying, like their representatives are literally in tears, asking the world to do something, so these are so real, and I think it's necessary that we stop looking away, right?
Yes.
So.
And like everyone at an individual level, I think we neglect the contribution we can make to global change, because we say, oh, it's okay. Of course it is, like big global companies and they are the main cause of pollution and all this climate change, but kan individual level contribution can neglect just because of that.
Exactly.
But I think sometimes it's like justification to keep living the way we're living.
Exactly.
It's easy to say like, okay, big companies, like I see like all these posts, and when I read articles, like it's so much easier to say, okay, big companies, but ani to can affect there are policymakers who can make that change for them, and it is up to them to an extent. Masike mani to at our level kan
I agree. Yes, I agree entirely. Like there are so many things that we can do, right? Like for example, like if you walk out of your room, like turn the lights off.
Yes.
And while you're brushing your teeth, turn the tap down. Then brush and also like our fast fashion consumption.
Yes.
Like I was so mad when because of the border dispute, Zara cancelled my discount orders.
I think that happens to all of us.
But yes, till turn let's reduce. Like if you have one white shirt, that should suffice.
Take good care of it.
Especially my sister, is like every time you bathe, you don't need to change your clothes. Please remember that. Because when you wash your clothes, there are tiny, minute fibers that goes into the wash, and these are all plastic, and over time they collect and they all go into the sea, and they're consumed by animals. Eventually, they're consumed by you. So, don't
wash your clothes too frequently.
like wear it for 3 days,
Yes.
you know. So no pangcha kan ni to lo wa kan fai lom. So
Yes.
she thia ben borak te po comparatively a fire lo khude won hate kan lo thokan ni chuan yes I get it ma se in su claim te ka ta khan nge washing powder it mang claima tu i mang claima electricity mang claima all of that she
Yes.
thia men money te te in kan ti ve the angani so I won't ask you to do drastic things like I did, like become a vegetarian, you know.
Oh, you did become a vegetarian because of that.
this,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Because the meat production, meat
Yes.
production is the greatest contributor of CO2 emission in the atmosphere, and animals how he hey, unavoiding what point methane and produce that. So when you have like big places where you have cattle farming, katachangkan CO2 emission tam turzia katsuishem. We won't get into the technical side of it. Mase just for you to have one burger akhanin CO2 emission tam lutukta lo tiveve grow katina ni chong lo mi consumption pui continuum theya
Yes.
katyang ne wa
And wastage also.
oh my god, yes,
wastage,
exactly.
yeah.
And plastic use, recycle. Hey, take away boxes te hi da charu mangle ru. Don't just throw it.
There was this one documentary when you talk about like beef burger, like on Netflix. I watched it. I remember.
Yeah, it's good.
Maybe we can. Do you remember the name?
No.
If you have a Netflix subscription, you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
look it
there
up.
are
It's there.
tons
It's a
of-
really
yeah,
good
yeah.
one. The one that I watched also, like America centric. The like of course, like it affects the world because and cattle farming katyang zongzong ina affect on CO2 emission. Like that's when I realized that katyang ang kanin global warming like katyang CO2 emissions ka affect ka shebe from that documentary.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Like and also see why under the like the climate change regime, the responsibility that America and China needs to take, and also India for that matter, it's so important because the thing is, climate change is a global issue. Like the CO2 emitted in America is going to affect you. It's not going to affect only the Americans because ultimately, so this is the world and there is an atmosphere around it, and there all the CO2 are trapped there. So eventually it's going to affect all of us. Zuwang chuanin kan vain enge kor fast fashion te po kan consumption din ya mang ukati na chanchu kor pakhat siam nan po hen it takes a lot of plastic and takes a lot of water.
Yes.
So khatyang ne just I mean just take care to read about it. The shem khatyang khanin be more responsible and try to change your relationship with Mother Earth because she's all that we have in shem, and our destruction of her is actually end result to came money exactly. COVID, look at the pandemic right now. We share to hang the boy game money the effect hawania kator to game money token ni dona. So I think it's we need to look more closely at ourselves.
Conscious buying hi apoy mo to.
Yeah, like I don't support things like Shein and Timi. This really
Chinese brand.
Yeah, and they're mass producing shem, and I suspect that I'm sure forced labor and child labor are involved in this. So sustainable chain kanti tehanin ethical chain of production kanti tehanin atang chuanin companies they do use it just to get the green label.
Yes.
Shem.
And
without
they mark up the price also.
Yeah, without really understanding shem ing tinge ethical chain ka ing takni ani di kanelo the mizowa po han kalo buchina. It's good, like there will a lot of them are like ethical production or manufacturing dentita mase hetilai mizorama chuanin alo ethical viau mai theita mase the production of that fabric or particular whatever item in the store. So like there are various agencies. I'm sure you've heard of things like Oxfam and Chalutukta. They have like a very transparent method of looking at all the production chain, and obviously it gets a little bit more expensive. Like you might be able to go to afford to buy chocolates from Oxfam which are ethically produced, but they will be relatively expensive than Cadbury or something like that, you know. Mase kanlo tivek thelo nipon, we can cut it down. Katyang zel khan.
Yes.
So yeah, that's basically Malouf for me.
I'm so glad we went into that conversation about global warming and that climate crisis, because I think that's a topic that needs to be brought up in every conversation, especially on this kind of platform.
Yeah, we need to speak more about it, Ron.
Okay, so your third book.
Yeah, so the third book is this little thing, and everyone is aware of this. It's called We Should All Be Feminists by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She's an African writer. Yeah, and you've read it, I'm sure.
I mean, kudos on the pronunciation. I can never pronounce her name.
She's like...
I was so impressed.
Yeah, I oh my gosh, like my relationship with her is deep. I love her to my core.
Okay.
So, because the thing is, I'm a feminist and you are too,
Yes.
I'm sure, yeah. And this little book I want to recommend because, and even though everyone, mania principle kaneve, or I'm in search for one tito tuanin, I'm sure we've come across it more. It's actually an adaptation of her TED Talk thing into a book. So at claim lutukta kachante mi papa hi chadir to kanaya shem. And they were but the two guys that I've asked to read, like one is my friend who lives in Mission Vang, and the other one is my friend who lives like around the corner from my house. Is a doctor, and sensible guys, Veve and Nita, so they really enjoyed the argument as well. But even though they did have comments about it, but the fact that they actually sat down and read it was, you know, kalonto pani. So Adichie she is a feminist writer, and but I think the way that she speaks about feminism is so beautiful, yeah. And like, I mean, feminism started out like with blood, sweat, and tears. You know, a lot of people died because of it. And the fact that you can vote today, you can vote and you can get your blue, hetilai blue, and color on Instagram. Ate iposta katianga iti teitsan ka. Women literally in the 1920s, the suffragettes, they literally died for that. Nothing comes without a price, because this world was formed by men, and they formed katikanin meitiatira kantelve anilaw katinan lawin because of their physical strength. Tishem atira, not now.
Yes.
Chung nun na zokha an lo nei chi na ni chu wang chuanin an mani an landscape siam sa kan ni ve wang khanin atam taka chuan
Yes.
Anita Mase, the world is not that anymore, and with more education and learning we've discovered so many things about ourselves, right? So, and there's so many things to speak about, you know, and I'm more comfortable when you speak, and then, you know, like I have like something to say.
So when, like, okay, on that note of what you're saying, like this world was created by men, Atita, I never really like thought of it that way. I always thought, okay, may less opportunities, less this and that. There's this book that I read which really changed my perspective. It's called Invisible Woman.
Okay.
And it's about how like keyboard it's made for man's fingers. Like ama kutiatin. That's why females to unsucceed law harzo kang, because it was designed for their englautan, and then AC tepo to na kanlaw mangta room temperature, normal room temperature kanti ang tehi mipa body temperature at sanga ansfuta nita. Women were not taken into account when those studies were made, and they never really are when studies are made and decisions are made that impacts us to this day. Decisions that were made 50 years ago saying, oh, this is the this is how the world should be, this is how we should set temperatures or whatever it is, as something as trivial as that. So katyang minhu, hey, katyang kami kale kabu katyara changkanin. I really understood how the system was never set up for us in the first place. So that's what I gathered from like what you just
Very
said.
well done. Yeah. So that space, feminism, Hitsu, I think I've come across people mizo abik takin kantamani feminist kanilaw. I mean, see, that's nang feminist kan ni fekro karantina ni chuang lauta. Mase they love saying things like we love saying things like Bible chuan mi pa da chung nunga, all of these things and that is used basically as a justification for how they feel about feminism and how women should be the ones who are subservient to men. And anti angin kan turaniya mi pabula chuanin kan ngoy turani ti ni tani. But said that is just talking about one story. And Ngozi Adichie, she speaks about like the harmful, the danger of the one single story. A powerful. See, a lot of feminist writings can be quite dense. Like when I was deciding on the third book to talk with you on, I was debating between whether I should have Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own or this. And I thought about it and I was like, well, a lot of people will identify with this more.
Yeah.
And since it's literature is essentially feminism, lampangani ikhansuani katya hemihi karon portsuak tazokta. So there are a lot of writers that you can actually read about, who's written a lot of books on feminism. One of which I would suggest is Betty Friedan. Like, she wrote this book called The Feminine Mystique, and it's changed the landscape of feminism as we knew it. And kakalo tiarvet he ula katyam masi adens lu tukain ngayon ni chuanin hemital po hi lo tiar ula. And if you've read it, I would encourage you to ask your male friends to read it. Every time I'm like advocating them to read, I'll be like, oh, it'll take you like 40 minutes. And then one of my male friends, he's like, I was frantically trying to finish it in 40 minutes, and I was like, I didn't have time to absorb the arguments that she was making, and I was like, yeah. But yeah, encourage other people to read this book because it's so important. Like, kan nga tuna yanin feminism gantin pong po ka feminist hanti ringon kan lawa. Make decisions from an emotionally intelligent place, you know. Look at the literature and educate yourself and see, like, is this right or is this wrong? Shem, how do I feel about this? Or voile kata Emilia to feminist niya opinions say discard lo nan kan. Educate yourself and see where she's coming from. Like, what are her opinions and where is that opinion of hers rooted?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
For feminists also to other feminists, because
exactly.
I think one thing that I really don't like is like very whitewash feminism that we see in the media today.
Yeah.
It's something that bothers me a lot. Like Manilo Kapo, I was having this conversation with a friend, like feminism mamo bear to its third world countries, its developing countries, opportunities, developed countries in anmamo law katina nilaw mase. I hate the fact that they're the poster child for feminism, very whitewashed feminism, and the kind of feminism and development that they need, and it's very different from what we need. We're still at the bottom of the ladder, and we still have a lot to climb. So katyanga kanin, and I hate feminism that excludes all these like kemani angte, you know, like indigenous groups or tribals, or like almani ang po any black te yang racial other races exclude he achalaw katya. So hetyang hemi le kapupo chakati it includes all of that. It's the fight for all women.
Yes,
it's not just the fight for nothing against white people, but it's not just a fight for like white type of feminism, because they're the people who gets more published, they're the people who get their stories more out on like on the media. Ang vakan and stories he alarbik ta. Our fight is just as
exactly. And I think to be really honest, like you said, our fight is even more, because the thing is there's a lot of cultural repression, and a lot of what women are subjected to these days is justified on the grounds of culture. Well, in our culture, you know, katyang kanita, zoanin and law. So, but the thing is that even Adichie has made this argument, like, people make culture, not vice versa. Shem, we can change it. We can change the conversations around it. So, because the thing is they have like set ideas of things. Doesn't mean it's impossible. Mas it's possible. Mas mania easier zoka to be able to bring about a change in culture. Shem, the way that we think, and people make culture.
Yes.
And also going back to the issue of how you spoke about we are underrepresented in terms of feminism. The argument basically that goes against feminism has always been that feminism is a Western concept. It arose in the West. No, it's not a Western concept. No, it is ours as well. Like, so we should stop compartmentalizing all of these things. And unloti masa, unloti chani, is good, but there are also tuna adichite and puimo chantu. she is an African writer from the continent of Africa, and she's like coming out anni page cultural traditional setup apo ke mani ang chia tribal veten ditani and money and systems of knowledge and understanding apo chuan ani pon khatianga ti thei chuan African culture ngai to Igbo culture atanga khatianga ron ti thei chuan ingi kinin kan ti thei lo bi kam, and I think we are going towards that. Hey, culture kan thlak thei ti hi kan achian zia chu. For example, mizo wa chuanin kan ki mania kan culture a chuan meichia le mipa anin nei chuan in chenna thula a man la chuan meichia an chan manga nei ngai lo ni. Mase now we have the Inheritance of Property Act, which obviously it has its own shortcomings. So ania mase tu na chuanin there are a percentage kan nei to tani. It's not something that we should be celebrating. Like for me, I have 10,000 things to say about it. Must say it evidences that no, we can change culture. Culture is not a fixed thing.
Exactly.
So bang chun ita chun
fanute pon inheritance an nei ve thei that was also changed, right? In the Inheritance Act.
Amata chuan kan chana chelu tuk top tani inge
pate la ka changpon
chu ni ta mase tu na chuan thil adang to thil hi adang the ni ti na ni chu ka without going too deep into it more. Chuanin inge feminism hi thil pakhat poi model kan miss out chin kashia ta chu for me personally is that feminism is not only about women, it's about everyone. The literature is about everyone, and for me I have not come across a system of learning that is more profound and that is more all-inclusive than feminism ever. Atira changin kan no panlai changin feminist kan mi allow. I was never raised to be like that. I was raised in a traditional Mizo home where the father made the decision and the woman like bustled around in the kitchen, and I had to make tea and food for my younger brother. So katianga kan en lokan tama se it's about reading and educating yourself and consciously making decisions from an emotionally intelligent place katika, not just deciding because this celebrity is talking about it. No, we're educating yourself. Feminism, it's basically about, at the end of it, technically I would say that it's an inquiry, it's an intellectual inquiry into the foundations of knowledge, Katini, number one. This is my own understanding of it. Number two is that feminism, too, it's an inquiry on the foundation of knowledge. Kanti angatuan mipale meitiatan set roles omlautani kanti taka. This is the whole essence, right? So it's not Amelia's job to get up in the morning and make coffee for her husband.
Yes.
Kaka apian tiring kale hi ititor na o ten document pakat an pelaw tuman. Shethiamem her socialization in I exaggerate atitur ka aron chanlen na mipazok aunaw mipate cater to zok ang ngai tat na khanin ama internalization na umto tani. Similarly apasal tan khanin coach ma TV and pa anu puisiam sa ekha kaka arol set role ni law shim ta. So feminism breaks these boundaries, and it's never comfortable for the person who has the better status in that whole in that whole thing to say that, oh well, I concede. That's why for men it's like they resist it. You have to remember that men have, like, let's take an example, mipa vesi itrapa kantitani no bangshe mipa ni kha inga tinge khatyang de kha soi mase mipa chun trap thelo mi, they don't have tear glands or what shit ya ma'am, like what
china apo mi lo chon tu an ni kherangai lo it's their loss
exactly chu bang chunya feminism chuan khatya ang set gender roles kha turani lo. We are all equal human beings kanti equal kanti khanin mipa kha nge wrestling a ka chawda ti na ni lo ai jet ya mem khata years and years of nge kanin evolve da na kha mipa chu stronger muscles te an lo nei to biologically and different ani meya mase that doesn't mean that
they're the superior sex.
So essentializing ang ti kha dikkati lo, like many people hey mizawate po, like they feel like women are the natural caregivers. Well, if you believe in it, it's true. Ange acha itan chuan lo believe from mase keima to essentialization khatyang de kati thelo to pani. Women are not the natural caregivers. Khatyang ani chuan mipa kha afati enkol tu ber anu pui ruireng khan I chuanin an shelo tan chuanin a fatika a mipa ka credit pakhat man pelawang shethia mem anu nu puizo khan murenga apa vekin thilati khan polama tang chuan nu vek thil dia lang so that the balance is not there shem ka tyang khan essentialization ang chi te ka ti thelo thilania it's just all of us should just treat each other as human beings don't nge me chei ni chuan chu ti chuan ni turani ang chi te shem ka tyang kha o simple de was chuan ni chu
Tulaya han hani do pokan I think there was a whole debate on Instagram about feminism and mizo tam takina kan argument khatu mi pa in guess kan la lom guess te la vera or na te thok vera o ti te ni ta which is physical chakna lampang zionga in soina khani ta ma se kan chhar chuan in feminism history or gender inequality shim history kan chhar chuan in man lai chuan in ngatinge gender equality hi alo om kan ti chan man lai chuan in lo nei mi an nya ramshang shang study ka chhar pakhata chuan in ramshang shanga lo nei mi an lo nya chu tyanga chuan in physical strength chakna kha apoi mo ni chu ti hun lai chuan ma se lo nei mi ang tamna culture reng a khanin khatyang physical strength ngai na reng a khanin mipa kha chungnung jok angin an om ta ni ama ero chu man laya changa lo nei mi ni lo physical strength angai em lo na culture an azon na anga khatwan equality man laya changin lo om to zo kani khatyang ang kha tuna chonin physical strength kan mamo lo tel to office work apo kan om hovek to khatyang zong a khan chuwang chonin khatyang physical strength ta changa inte ringot don kha theilawa biologically in Gracy soyang khan kan danga I metia in mipa ina achakna zong kan pa nei theilaw ang khanin I mipa po fan pai thei big lauta exactly chukatyanga khanin difference kan nei ve ma said that doesn't mean that one is superior or one is lesser than the other khaka kan sha thya mangaya feminism argument ka mu tam tak mizo zinga chonin it's usually that like physical argument hi atam ma se education te intellectuality te kan enton we're all equal boards exam te or mizoram ina kan sha thya theitan ber turtan class 10 class 12 board exam mo college university level apo institutionalized education shim kan en chuanin it's very equal mi pa an thiam big lawa me chia po an thiam big chang law it's very equal khat kha hey kan sha ta poi mo ka physical argument ringot kan mang law nan mo mi feminism a han. And another thing that I would like to add, because this is something that I'm very passionate about, like I could do a whole podcast on this. One thing that I would like to add to feminism kan ti hanin inge very very extreme type of feminism or like hey group shang anom vea thil shima extremist to in group apo an lo amta mase amakati chu kathil lo notice ve me to feminism ani wang hengating a extremes how to hi example an lak big hey tak hi amakatya another group a hanin extreme te hi chu for example just example ani chu caution thilamo eng polo ni se or muslims te polo ni ta se muslims apo extremist group an lo amta khatyang apo a extreme group of khan adang zong agenda ha kan va judge theilau kan judge ngai lo masenga tinge feminism ani ta ka wang hianin I kami tip of the iceberg lo extremist how achang khan the whole lot kha kan judge chinti hi this argument hi to kasyam vedwa hey a lot of feminists to allow extreme to kani so I believe in the equality of both the genders I don't believe in the superiority masya achentwanin I see that they advocate for women being superiority I don't kakatuka do me allow game upon I don't believe in that we're equal kati masya khata tak khanin khatyang superior lo du ho chia hi anron single out ta hey anron example anron function
I agree entirely kakatumo addicta because the thing is for it's feminism the word itself has always been label has been considered to be some kind of like a dirty word
negative connotation
but I think we also have to realize why did it start up I haven't given it much thought but just off the top of my head I would say when okay the general understanding the understanding is this meitiatu you're supposed to be meek you're supposed to be subdued ni dem mo chong tam vak lo chuanin en lo I mi pa different spec zel mi this is always the thinking that has pervaded in the population of the world since time immemorial. Shem, if men mi pa zo kinatong lai chon ingoy turani. Shetia mem. So the thing is, the problem therefore with essentializing people like that is that when one person strays from that course, then it becomes superfluous. Shem, and then it's easy to laugh at those people and point finger at those people. Shem, so I think at the end of the day, kami kan essentialize tutuk na may seti turpi kanga kan ngai to one course kan kal kami zongzong titura kan ngai angakan tian an kal lo chuan hetla klema an va diversion an nemo and irin ibase ang le idu anga an omlo khan chuan it becomes so superfluous, and that's why kan treatment of it, kan perception of it becomes extreme.
Yes.
Shem. So and this happens, like I'll just stir a little bit and can dive and lo kanga kan digress lo kanga in terms of children's rights because children are supposed to be okay. Give me three words to describe children.
Innocent, fun, and then what did I say? Honest.
Three things. Very good. Innocent, fun, honest. Because this is how we perceive them. But children can also be otherwise, right? So
also be cunning.
Yeah, very much so. And so let's go to the Nirbhaya case. Nirbhaya case. So those were like juveniles anitani. The main culprit peka to juvenile nida below 18 years of age anitani. So I think the society, and even for that matter the courts, an understanding of children, innocent, fun, honest, divert na salutuk taka that children are doing this katakan can response ka extreme tani to. So being against the death penalty, it was so easy to justify giving death penalty to them because they represented everything that we recognize about children. So you get it, right? The feminism argument. Just try to reconcile that in your own time. So this is how I understand and I perceive all these things. I hope that's not too technical.
No, it's not. But sikima po tuna siya hanggang realize nearby case on death penalty.
Yes. Why not?
Yes, why not? And especially with the sensationalization of media and like a documentary getting paid at one. Kamu chatay law. Now Delia online ni book siya. I would text her, "Are you home?
Yeah,
like
are you safe?
Are you safe? Like meaning top metro at one so like I was so I was so paranoid. Ito na then that's why I had that thought. Like.
Yeah, I understand. There's a culturalization of our thinking, Ishan, because of all these things. And when I thought about this, I was actually thinking of doing an essay on this, but sadly we don't have a publication that's respected in Mizoram. Maybe eventually we'll write about all these things, Ishan. And I think that's how it's important to read and try to understand these things.
Yes.
Tackle with them, Ishan. And like Instagram reels and their YouTube shorts and nuam tuk we BTS lam and nuam I enjoy. It's just like
oh my god. Okay, I really like his video of
the king thing where he raps.
Yes.
Yeah. So
underground there
that where he has like the long blonde hair.
I think so. Lam tipo Anyway,
oh my god, I can't believe we did that. So I'm like, what I'm trying to say, it's fun. All of these things are fun. Like I enjoy a busy lutukte, and I like to come home and I just look at their dancing and I'm like. So other than that, there are also other things in this world that you need to pay attention to, Ishem. So I would encourage you to Afghanistan let's not look away, like the women and children out there, Ishem, and also the men, women and children more like because protected feminist the people in Afghanistan I'm in this I've got a couple of friends working with the UN and they've been in like Kabul for a long time, and so we have this group, and I don't know why they added me because my specialization is with the laws of war and a lot of the UN workers who are Afghans, they're in the group, and they were just like kami nge Kabul and Lagzan Khan Talibanin, they were just texting about how desperate they were feeling. And then there's this one friend of mine, like he's an Australian guy, and I studied with him, and he's Makani, he was just suggesting to them like how they could escape from the country. And I was just reading it, and I felt, hey, and I just, and from the comforts of my home, I could just watch the news and just be like, well, then go back to my reels. We need to start engaging. Can educate the process. Can buy in zero.
We need to know that. We need to realize that those are things that are happening. It's not a movie that you can turn off and turn off.
Exactly.
Turn on and turn off. It's not a production.
Right? Yeah.
I legit thought when I saw that video of the plane and the people like around it, I thought it was, I don't know, some movie or something.
Kim apun katisin ka en khani share my story on WhatsApp. I was like, tungi hit yang hian alim hian tia kati. It's just airport security kan sheve kanga khatianga ti thailo zia. I'm like athil thailo lu tu ka ngai kha alo thei ring se she we are up
and it was so graphic of those two guys falling off the plane.
Oh my gosh,
and like hey katyang kan ngai to chuanin people are desperate enough to take those actions. So an situation tur khachu katyang khop anti du to khachuanin extreme measures unlock du to chuan, then we have to think of the situation they're in. Katyang khop anti du to chuanin an mani kha an situation ka athele tina animate kha kan sha champu yangai katya.
So it's all a part of the conversation, right? Like to look at the things that are silenced, like in your life, like look at, there's another like feminist methodology, like legal methodology, like looking at the silences. Like when you read news articles in Siartin mo, hey op-ed section, opinion section ang hintite katsiar vechina kapmanhian kapmansangin, like just looking at hey tunang like and writers chatak tatte ang ate pohan. I just look at the things that they write sometimes, and I'm just like the silences are so big. Ishem it's a perspective po lang ngai lawisoy ang kan. We're still hey kan omna hit yang hilanita. So katya news article te lo charan ilo enani pon, like just try to like critically analyze it by yourself. Dikla omlo critical analysis ayani shem. It's actually it's actually allowing yourself the freedom of thought and to roam around intellectually where it do dani question ro, and that will expand your thinking ni shem. So BTS lam ti vel tong nilo
I think this going to conversation here. I think it's more about like how books expand our intellectual knowledge, and also how they help us think better, help us be more aware of what's happening around us. Like Gracy soyang kanin ale kabu pakat hey, an imaginary life aron so poka her interpretation to global climate change lampang di na interpret that. I don't think that's how everybody who reads it interpreted it. Mase katyanga kanin. So that's the beauty of reading books, and that's the beauty of reading kihanin. It's not just books. You can read articles like kepo tulay takso I may read a lot of things online, like articles. Those are still reading. They still count as reading. It doesn't have to be like all those big fat books or all these like really really serious books more. So thank you so much Grace for coming today. And I think that was such a good session. Like thank you so much for sharing what goes on inside your head. Like, I can't wait for everyone to see this video and to hear what you have to say. So
thank you so much for inviting me. Bye.